Welcome into Fox Sports The Gambler on an NFL Reaction Monday. I'm Sam Oshtry, joined by my partner in crime, my good friend Sean Barnard. Every single Monday, we're going to be with you kicking off the entire NFL season into the NBA season, but it's football time. We have the first full weekend of football, finally. A full day of college football, full day of NFL Sunday. Sean, how you doing?
Doing great, Sam Oshtry. Though we are back in full swing. It is the fall. It is football season. We are back on our normal schedule right here. So it felt like these past couple weeks, the end of the summer, sort of dragging through the sports calendar. It's back fully in our face right now. We got action all over the place. Game tonight, a loaded weekend. So I'm hyped to get into it all.
Absolutely. And we're going to jump all over the slate yesterday. We're going to talk about the best win, our worst win, our best loss, worst loss, some takeaways, things we like, dislike. We're going to overreact. We're going to say what you shouldn't be overreacting to. But there's only one place to start, and it's with probably the game of the year. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a game as good as what we saw last night between the Bills and the Ravens. A rematch, of course, of that divisional round game last year when the Bills ultimately win, but then they, of course, lose to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. This was an opportunity for revenge for the Ravens to open the season. It was in Buffalo, but this was an opportunity for revenge, and it felt like the Ravens were going to win it. Ravens had control for most of the game. They felt like the better team for most of the game, and then they get conservative in the fourth quarter, and the Bills mount a huge comeback. The Ravens punt with about 1:30 to go. Questionable call, and here you have it. The Bills march down, and they win on a game-winning field goal. 41-40 is the final. It feels like, we're going to get your reaction in a second, but it feels like the same way the Bills can't beat the Chiefs, get over that Chiefs hump, the Ravens are now struggling to get over that Bills hump. Sean, what was your main takeaway?
Yeah, I think these are absolutely the two best teams in the AFC, maybe the two best teams in all of football right now. That was an incredible football game. The NFL got it right, having that as our opening Sunday night matchup there. I thought the Bills were incredible. That Josh Allen has really taken that step into that category of quarterback that we need to talk about. Borderline that Mahomes type category. And of course, he's got to put the rings on the finger. Both these guys, Lamar and Josh Allen, have to find a way to get the job done in the postseason there. But you're not going to get more supreme quarterback play than what we just saw from Josh Allen to close out last night. It was an incredibly impressive performance right there. It does feel like there's almost like a mental side to this battle that Baltimore is really suffering from, that they can't quite get over that hump. And they're going to have to figure out a way that they've loaded up their treasure chest of assets here. You got Derrick Henry now in the mix. This defense should be one of the best of the Baltimore era here, and they're still not quite getting the job done. So this was a game that I entered with the thought process of, I think this means more to Baltimore than it does to Buffalo, but that didn't matter in the end because the Bills found a way to get it done. So hat tip to them, and an awesome game of football all around.
You watch the quarterback play throughout the entire day. You watch on Red Zone. You're flipping from game to game on Sunday Ticket, and you're like, all right, this is fine, whatever. And then you watch Sunday night, and you watch Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, and those two guys are in a completely different stratospheres. And we'll put Patrick Mahomes right there too, in terms of the level that they're playing at versus everyone else. So a lot of people are criticizing their defense. Ravens had one of the best defenses in the league last year. Bills had a solid defense, really came on towards the end of the year. And they're like, how are each of these teams giving up 40 points? Those defenses are going to be fine. They have great personnel. This is two of the best quarterbacks of this generation who are so uniquely talented, where they're great passers, but they don't also do it with their legs. And those guys can carve up any defense. Doesn't matter how good it is. So this is just two of the best quarterbacks. And watching those guys duel it out was awesome. I mean, I'm telling you, like, I don't think we're going to have a better game than what we saw last night. This was an incredible football game from start to finish with two of the best quarterbacks. Maybe like in the playoffs, Patrick Mahomes is just a different beast. But over the last two regular seasons, there's no question Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen are the best quarterbacks in the league. And it'll probably be a battle for MVP between those two guys again. And I'm a Josh Allen guy. I thought he should have won MVP last year. And so when he didn't make the AP first team, I didn't think he was going to. But then, of course, he ends up winning MVP. And I think that was the right call. A lot of people were on the Lamar Jackson train. Josh Allen had over 400 yards that he accounted for between his legs and his arm in that game yesterday. That's unbelievable. And Lamar's stats don't necessarily pop, but he was incredible too as a runner and as a passer. The Ravens really got conservative late in that game where they didn't allow Lamar to win it with his arm, which I thought they should have. Were you surprised by that? Because when you're looking at all these Bills wins over the Ravens, a lot of these Ravens playoff losses, a lot of their big time losses, they've led in the second half. They've led in the fourth quarter, and they blow those games. This is Jim Harbaugh leads every active coach in terms of blown fourth quarter leads, in terms of leads where he's had a 10-plus point lead. He is number one in that blown lead category. Were you surprised at how conservative the Ravens got late in that game?
Yeah, I was a bit. I don't know, like in the early parts of the game, one of the takeaways that popped out to me is it felt like Lamar was running for his life, that the Bills were doing a really nice job of creating pressure, and they didn't really get to him, but certainly speeding up his process and chasing him out the pocket there. It felt like at the midpoint of that game, that sort of settled in. And I was kind of surprised when, as you were setting me up here, that there was only one sack officially logged by the Bills last night. It felt like they were in his face pretty nonstop there. And I think that kind of took a toll as the game progressed. It felt like maybe the midpoint, he found some, a little bit of an answer to that, or Baltimore did across the board. And then that was a problem down the stretch again. So I think like when you have a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, you just got to live and die with wherever he takes you. And I don't think Baltimore really abided by that principle there. So at the end of the day, like this is going to be one of the highest level football games that we see all year, like you mentioned. I don't think that the Ravens should be in panic mode after this or anything like that, but certainly not the way that you want to start the season. And I do think that was a matchup that meant more to Baltimore. So they are going to be feeling this today. This is obviously the team that knocked them out of the postseason just a couple months ago with that fateful Mark Andrews drop there. So I don't know. I'm glad we got to watch that for week one. I'm not ready to dive too deep into the takeaways of like Baltimore should be panicked or anything like that.
No, definitely not. I mean, it's week one. And what we saw last year from week one was the Ravens lost to the Chiefs in that opening game on Thursday night to kick off the season. And they lost week two, too, as a big favorite. And they started the season 0-2. And that didn't matter at all. Of course, they picked it up as the year went on. So it doesn't really – anything that happens in week one to me doesn't really matter because teams will get better as the year goes on. And then some teams will falter off and we'll know who's left standing. But these two teams are competing for that top spot in the AFC, like that number one overall seed that will get a bye and home field advantage throughout the entire playoffs. It's between these two teams. I know it's silly and stupid kind of to discount the Chiefs, who have just been to 3 straight Super Bowls and dominated the AFC ever since Patrick Mahomes came onto the scene. But what we saw from the Chiefs on Friday night, which we will talk about, certainly I'm not letting you off the hook about Justin Herbert, so we'll talk about that. But this is these are the two teams that are going to be competing for that top spot. As far as I'm concerned, these are the two teams that are the class of the AFC, like you said, and it doesn't NFL. Really get better than this. Yeah, of the NFL too.
And I will note you did forget to mention Daniel Jones when speaking about the premier quarterback play across the NFL.
He'll be mentioned.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool that like you're right. It's almost like for sure Mahomes is at the front and center, but the two, like the biggest rivalry in maybe the entire NFL may shape up to be Ravens Bills. That it does feel like these are the two heavyweight dogs that we're going to see face off and just scrap and looking to earn that chance. I don't think this is the last time that we see these two guys face off this year. And I think there will be a playoff matchup between these two teams directly. It very well could be the AFC Championship, depending on how things shape out in the overall standings there. But I do think like that was great football. These are two teams itching to get over the edge. And I think this year might be the season that one of them actually does it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't have the Chiefs. I mean, my preseason pick to win the Super Bowl was the Bills. I had Bills over Packers. That was my head pick, not my heart pick. So like I think this is the year that the Chiefs aren't ultimately back in the Super Bowl. But we'll talk about that. Just to put a cap on this game, a little stat I'll give you. The Ravens are the first team in NFL history to score 40-plus points and rush for over 235 yards and lose. Wow. Teams were previously 277-0 before last night. So you score 40-plus points, you rush for that many yards between Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, and somehow they find a way to lose where they had complete control of that game, but the Josh Allen and the Bills just never go away. They're always lurking, and they pull it off. Any other takeaways, or should we move on?
Yeah, I'm ready to keep it rolling from here. I think, like I said, that's going to be in the mix for one of the best games of the season there. I think I'm willing to walk away with that being like a bit of a victory for both these sides. That I think the Ravens are very clearly legitimate contenders, even though losing last night, and the Bills. Like, I guess my final takeaway is that I had sitting there last night. I can't believe what Josh Allen has turned himself into, man. Like, when you think about the Josh Allen that showed up in the NFL his rookie season, I thought it was impossible to take the level of strides that he has become a directly elite quarterback. Like, he was objectively bad as a rookie, and his decision-making was atrocious. The fact that he's cleaned things up and just been a dude that when the game's on the line, you want him making the calls, ball in his hand like that, is pretty incredible to me. So I don't think it gets brought up enough or acknowledged. Just really like the career arc that this guy's had and how many steps forward that he's taken his progression. So shout out to Josh Allen for putting the pieces together.
Yeah, people talk about like someone like Peyton Manning all the time, who was like a guy who won with his head and between the ears, just such a cerebral quarterback. And it wasn't necessarily his talent, even though of course that was there. Josh Allen's become that. He's become like as smart, like as Patrick Mahomes and these other guys of dissecting defenses, and his recklessness has really simmered down. I mean, this was a guy that not just put his body on the line, but put the ball on the line constantly.
100%.
Just stupid throws, was never running out of bounds, was going into contact, which of course could risk injuries. And coaches tell you not to do that, even though quarterbacks who are tough guys like he is do that all the time. But he's really limited the recklessness in his game and just becoming a really smart quarterback. So to your point, Josh Allen's development and progression throughout his career has been incredible. And he's the best quarterback in the league as far as I'm concerned right now. Like it might be a little crazy because Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, sure, but over the last 2 seasons, the entire sample of work, including the regular season, Josh Allen's been the guy.
I want to be like riding on this train of Patrick Mahomes isn't the guy anymore. I just can't do it. Like even in like a matchup like Friday, which we can talk about now, like there's still moments where I'm like, I think Patrick Mahomes is the only quarterback on the planet that is making that play. Like the one that was like that shovel pass as he was falling there is like, that's absurd stuff that how do you even think of, let alone execute that? Mahomes is still the guy that's going to hold that crown until someone knocks it off it. But it does feel like there's more of a threat of that happening than I imagined was going to be the case.
You know that line from Moneyball where it's like, there are rich teams and there are poor teams and there's 50 foot of crap. And then there's us. That's like the tiers of the quarterbacks right now, where it's like it's Mahomes, it's Josh Allen, it's Lamar Jackson, and I don't even know if you want to put Burrow on that list, but he's
tough week for Burrow, guys. Yeah, tough week for Burrow.
Burrow's right there. He's definitely the 4th best quarterback in the league, but he's not right there. So there's those 3. There's Burrow, and then there's a massive, and like Hurts is right there too. I'll put Hurts right there too. But there is a massive drop off just between those top 3 in terms of their talent and what they're capable of doing, put teams and offenses on their back, and then everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would keep it the top 5. I think that like,
but even like I don't want this to be a Jalen Hurts discussion, but there is, and I love Jalen Hurts, but there is such a massive drop off between what Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes can do for their offenses versus what Jalen Hurts can. There is.
But at the same time, like Thursday was a game that I think the Eagles only won because Jalen Hurts was their quarterback. And he did exactly what was necessary on that. But I think like all these plug and play guys who can go around the league, none of the Baker Mayfields, none of the like those type of guys who are good quarterbacks, like are able to execute that way. So I hear you. It's certainly the top 3, I think, is very clearly like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson there. I do think Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts at least have a seat at the table on that.
All right, we can table the quarterback discussion for another day. Let's keep it moving here. We're gonna go to give out some superlatives of the weekend. So we're gonna hit on a ton of games doing this, and ton of players, teams, quarterbacks, whatever. But we're gonna start with our best win of the Sunday slate, and we're actually not gonna keep it the Sunday slate. We're gonna go Thursday, Friday, whatever you want to hit. Best win of the slate, and then we're gonna go to the worst win. But started with best win, and I'll give you mine after yours.
The best win, I'm going a little bit off the map here. I'm going with the Indianapolis Colts, man. That I think there's some life in Indy that I did not expect remotely to be the case. I kind of took this as the win that changed my perception of a team the most. And for me, that was the Colts. Now, I do think probably the larger story here is how bad the Miami Dolphins are. That's very clearly a part of this equation here. But Daniel Jones, man, I thought this guy, we've seen him look atrocious as a quarterback, but that was not the Daniel Jones that took the ball on Sunday. He completed 22 of his 29 passing attempts for 272 yards and a touchdown. Also added with his legs 26 yards and a pair of rushing touchdowns. I thought the Colts looked borderline good there. I'm not going to say that this is a team that's going to be in the mix or relevant from a season, but I do think there is a chance that I have Daniel Jones on the watch of the Sam Darnold career arc, or maybe even the Baker Mayfield career arc, where he does find his footing at another location. Geno Smith career arc there. I could see it happening there. I was really impressed by what I saw by the Indianapolis Colts, and I did not think there was any way that I would be saying that on Monday morning.
Yeah, Daniel Jones was awesome. I mean, that was one of the more impressive games he's probably played in his entire career. 22 for 29, 272 yards in the air. He looked really comfortable and poised. I think Daniel Jones is a good quarterback. I mean, he's not like some franchise guy that obviously was drafted way too early from where the Giants got him. But when you leave New York and you leave an awful organization that's run really poorly with the Giants, and you go to, the Colts have had their issues since Andrew Luck retired, but like we like Shane Steichen a lot. We think he's a good offensive mind, a guy who can develop quarterbacks well. When you go to a situation like that, it can help your career. And there was a reason he won the job over Anthony Richardson. That might speak to more Anthony Richardson's issues and how the Colts view him than anything else. But still, like Daniel Jones is a good quarterback. He's better than a backup quarterback in the league. He's a serviceable quarterback. I want to pump the brakes for a second because the Dolphins, and I think everyone predicted this before the year, and they've obviously proved it true when you see Tyreek Hill's outburst on the sideline. They're going to hit the trifecta this year, and it's going to happen before midseason, where Mike McDaniel is going to be fired, Tua is going to be benched, and Tyreek Hill is going to request a trade and probably be traded by the time we hit midseason. This is an absolute, and everyone predicted it coming into the year. The vibes around the team were awful. Tyreek was calling out Tua. Tua and Tyreek obviously have a very poor relationship. Mike McDaniel is not as cool as a South Florida guy he is. He is no, when he's vaping on the sideline, doing all that, he has no grasp of that culture and that organization. And everyone kind of knew that and predicted they were going to collapse. And you just saw in a week one, if they can't score against the Colts, and Tua looked awful with his 3 picks. One was completely overthrown. Another one it was like, where are his eyes going on this?
Like, looked the linebacker in the eyes and threw it right to him.
I mean, we could have picked that up. We could have read his eyes and picked that off. It was an awful interception. He looked awful. So this is a complete rebuild for the Dolphins starting next season. I think everyone recognizes that. They're going to have to go in a lot of different directions at a lot of key spots. So I don't want to just crown the Colts and Daniel Jones just yet because of how awful the situation is with the Dolphins that they're playing. But I will say the one thing I saw from Daniel Jones was what's made him kind of a questionable quarterback most of his career and his tenure with the Giants was the negative plays, just like the dumb sacks, awful decisions that lead to turnovers. And that wasn't there yesterday. Like, that was impressive to see. There's still like some throws where he's off target, sure, and he still kind of uses legs, I don't want to say poorly, but kind of scrambles out of the pocket before he should. Doesn't always love to stay in there. He's obviously an athletic guy. But you saw less negative plays, and that's the next development for Daniel Jones to be a more legitimate starter. And I thought that was big. And you're right. Like, to everyone's point, and everyone talks about this in the NFL now, it's all about your situation more than it is your talent. Like, you need a great coaching staff. You need a great situation. There's very few quarterbacks in the league who are good enough to overcome a bad situation. And obviously Daniel Jones and most of the guys in the league aren't. So when you go from one really bad organization to another one that might be more promising, like we saw even Jared Goff, who struggled, and he went from a good coach to a good organization. But sometimes you need new scenery. You need a new coaching staff and just a new organization, new building to walk into every day. And that helps guys like Jared Goff, like Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, all of these guys who've had career resurrections. We could be looking at that with Daniel Jones. I'm pumping the brakes a little bit, but it wouldn't shock me if it ends up in that direction, because sometimes a new situation and more experience, more reps behind you helps. And that might be what we're looking at.
Yeah, that's kind of where my brain's at as well with the situation. And again, I did not expect for me to be here after week one. And I will, to talk about Miami real quick. We all love like Mike McDaniel for like him being kind of quirky and, the way that he carries himself. When things are going south, which they currently are for the Dolphins, I can't imagine that version of the dude having to walk in front of the locker room and trying to put his foot down, and how annoying that must come off there. It does feel like things are going nowhere very quick down in Miami. I'm going to admit that I do think we get the Mike McDaniel firing. We do get the Tyreek Hill trade request. And I will also put this out there that it is a $72 million buyout in Tua's contract there. So it's a lot of money. They committed. It's going to be a mess. I don't think this cleans itself up anytime soon.
I'm with you. All right. I'll give you my best win. I was going to go right to the best loss. We're going to talk about it because I'm not letting you off the hook. And this is it. The best win of the weekend, and we're going back to Friday, is the Chargers. And I had the Chargers winning this division before the season. I'm feeling pretty good about it right now. We can talk about what it means for the Chiefs, but let's talk about what it means for this Chargers and Chargers offense, where Justin Herbert played a nearly perfect ball game. I mean, let's read the numbers right here. 318 yards, 3 touchdowns, 131 passer rating, 73% completion percentage. He was terrific in every setting possible, and you've been the biggest Justin Herbert hater that exists. And I get what you're going to say, so I'm just going to get ahead of it right now. Yeah, the playoff stuff is bad. Those 2 playoff losses, he was responsible for both those losses, no doubt. You've also been critical of him in the regular season too, and just his place among one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's undoubtedly a top 10 quarterback. We're now looking at 2 straight games. This is probably the first time this has happened in Patrick Mahomes' career. We're looking at 2 straight games where Patrick Mahomes has been outplayed by the other quarterback. When you go back to that Eagles Super Bowl against Jalen Hurts, and Justin Herbert was the better quarterback in that game Friday night in Brazil. That's probably never happened in Patrick Mahomes' career. So kudos to this Chargers team, which is really good, and kudos to Justin Herbert, who's obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And everyone's talking about the Ravens, Chiefs, Bills. This Chargers group is right there as a contender in the AFC.
I just want all those quotes about them being contenders and how legitimate they are. Just want those firmly on the record for when we're having this conversation come playoff time, and the narrative shifts to all these guys let down Justin Herbert, that he doesn't have enough around him. You're right. Justin Herbert was excellent Friday night. That was one of the better games of his career. I will also note that was the Chiefs preseason matchup there. That this is a Kansas City.
What does that mean?
That means Kansas City does not wake up until midway through the season. That they
were 15-1 last year.
Yeah, sure. That is not going to be the version of the Chiefs that we see when this season hits its prime time here. I'm impressed with Justin Herbert. I'll give him the tip of the hat. He was excellent Friday night. He read the defense perfectly. He took exactly what they gave him, execute on each of those throws. That was one of the better games, I think, of his entire career here. That run to close things out, I think, was a big boy play from him, and that's the kind of stuff that I need to see. That him reading the defense correctly, finding it, taking things on. I think it was notable that I felt intentionally was much more mobile with his legs and trying to use that as an asset there. This is a big year for Justin Herbert, that he has to find a way to put it together. It's an excellent way to start it there. So I'm not ready to eat all my words just yet, but he certainly had a great start to the year.
I sense a different tone from you, though. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, yeah, I have to take it on the chest a little bit here that I've talked a ton of crap on this dude, and he delivered on Friday night, that he looked great. I'm still going to stand 10 toes down on my take that I think I know who the true Justin Herbert is, and I think he will find himself out there this season. We just talk glowingly about Daniel Jones for 10 minutes on here. You know, I could make a case right now that Daniel Jones was more impressive than Justin Herbert.
Well, look at the competition. Look at the competition.
Well, yeah, we'll see how that ultimately plays itself out. But my point being here, it is one game. It is 1 week. I'm not going to get out of control with the takeaways, but I do got aware that Justin Herbert looked great on Friday night.
I don't think you accounted for the Madison beer bump. That's where your mistake came in.
That is the spin zone that I'm going to kind of lean on here at Sam Oshtry. Maybe there is something to, you get a solid woman in your life like Justin Herbert now seemingly has, that gets him on the right track. He's got his head straight. So we'll see. Once again, week 1, not getting out of control. I saw he brought his offensive lineman out on a date with her, which I think is one of the more, I can't decide if I think it's a football guy move or like an insane move right there. But nonetheless, we're monitoring the situation.
That picture is going viral. I'm sure his offensive lineman also had a girl with him too. I don't think it was just them three when he was running third wheel as protection. Maybe he was, though. You never know.
Yeah, first Chargers quarterback to bring protection to a date, man.
Yeah, good for him. Here's what I'll say, though. I'll flip the Chargers. So you're not concerned at all about the Chiefs, because this Chiefs offense, we kind of know what it's been throughout the regular season the last couple of years. Is they've been an average offense the last 2 seasons. They just have. Like, Patrick Mahomes hasn't been this otherworldly quarterback in the regular season, and their offense hasn't been great. It's been their defense that's been around top 5 in the league the last 2 years. And then the playoffs come, and we know how great Patrick Mahomes is and his clutchness and all that. You're not concerned at all about this Chiefs team, because Travis Kelce's obviously old. Even on that touchdown run, he looked really slow. Like, he's just not the factor that he once was. His improvisation skills, all that, where him and Mahomes were always on the same page, just none of that is there anymore. So we know what Travis Kelce's decline has been. Xavier Worthy obviously goes out because he gets popped from Kelce early in that game. Rashee Rice is going to miss the first 6 games due to suspension. When he's back, things could be very different. But this Chiefs offense isn't great, but that's fine. The Chiefs defense has been one of the best in the league the last couple of seasons. It really struggled. And that was the concern for me, is how much it struggled against a really good quarterback and a really good offense, I think, with Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen, of course, Ladd McConkey, all those guys, where Justin Herbert has a real receiving core. But are you not concerned at all about this Chiefs team? And what I mean by concern is, are they definitely going to win the division? We know they'll be in the playoffs. We know they'll be in the picture as long as they have Patrick Mahomes. But I think the Chargers are winning this division this year.
And by the way, I'll note the Broncos and Raiders both also picking up week 1 wins. So, like, it's going to be competitive across the board in that. It's going to be one of the tougher divisions in the entire NFL. I get it's easier said than done. It is frustrating to me that I feel like the Chiefs roster construction is such built upon Patrick Mahomes is going to bail us out. That, like, yes, I understand you're paying for Chris Jones and you're paying Travis Kelce, and there's other guys that are getting these like high value contracts here, along with Mahomes himself, who's, you know, making quite a pretty penny there. But I do feel like that they've sort of let Mahomes down in a way of not giving him the proper pieces around him. That, like, even the guys that we're speaking about, like Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, these are guys that are fine. These aren't guys that like opposing defensive coordinators are up at night worried about. And I do think it's a disservice to Mahomes directly. That yes, he can elevate guys around him in a way that very few quarterbacks are ever capable of. I don't think he should have to do that. That I think the focus should be on how do we pair this guy with a legitimate wide receiver one? How can we find his version of Randy Moss or AJ Brown or whatever the case may be? It would be very funny. And I do want to throw this out here right now. The Tyreek Hill trade request, man, when that comes into play, could we get a return to Kansas City?
I just don't think they have the cap space for it.
Yeah.
Like, that's a huge contract that they've taken on. Where are you going to shed cap on that?
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. It may be completely impossible, but that thought did cross my mind while sitting there watching. I guess my overall answer to you is there is a little bit of panic in me that I think they've gotten far too comfortable with, though. If we got Patrick Mahomes, we're going to have a chance, which is true, but you're not exactly putting him in the best spot to maximize your odds right there.
What was really concerning to me, and goes back to the Super Bowl, was the Chargers' defensive line was getting to Patrick Mahomes. It felt like almost every snap.
Yeah.
And he was running for his life. They had a ton of pressures on Mahomes. That was the biggest problem in the Super Bowl. We know that. That's why the Eagles won the Super Bowl more than any other reason, is their pass rush demolished the Chiefs' offensive line, and they were getting to Patrick Mahomes, forcing pressures and forcing turnovers from Mahomes because of it. And you saw that again. And the Chiefs invest in the offensive line. I mean, they got Josh Simmons, this rookie who they used first-round capital on, who they're really high on. But again, he's the left tackle. That was his first NFL start. He's going to come on as the year goes on, hopefully, if you're the Chiefs. But this offensive line still did not look great. And that's the scariest part for me, because obviously that was the reason the Chiefs didn't win the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, no, 100% there. And I think that they have not covered that up as well as they need to there. I'm not ready to like close the door on the Chiefs window, but I do think they've got a little bit too comfortable with just the assumption that we're going to be there. The rest of the NFL continually gets better, man, that nobody is waiting around and watching you here. Every team is putting in the work themselves and finding their own pathway. So my panic meter is increased on the Chiefs. I'm not ready to completely be there just yet.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I don't think, I said it before the year, the Super Bowl hangover, going to 3 straight Super Bowls is exhausting. And the AFC is just so good, so many great quarterbacks. So I don't think they're going to the Super Bowl this year. And I don't even think they're winning the division this year. But am I worried about them long term? Not really. I mean, even we look at the Patriots dynasty, they had 2 separate legs of their dynasties. I mean, they had the early to mid 2000s, and then like the late 2000s to early 2010s, they went 10 years without a Super Bowl. And then they come back in 2015, have the second leg of their dynasty when they win three more Super Bowls. You know, Andy Reid wouldn't be there for a potential second leg of a dynasty, and the Chiefs aren't falling off the face of the earth. I'm not overreacting like that, unless a major injury happens. But still, like, I just don't think this is the year that the Chiefs are going to dominate the AFC and just rip off wins and win all these close games like we saw last year.
And we forget how unprecedented it is, the success that Mahomes has had. That, like, historically, it is way more in line with what happens, that you fail a ton of times before you're able to climb that mountaintop. He sort of skipped the line in that conversation. So I do wonder if we're going to get a couple of these seasons before they fully retool. I do think that there will be another like era of Mahomes where he's going to several Super Bowls in a row, winning a couple. And who knows, maybe that just continues. That could very well be this year still. I'm not writing this team off, but it wouldn't shock me if like the next 2-3 seasons are a Kansas City Chiefs step back, and then all of a sudden they're retooled with this next part of a dynasty here. But all too early to fully believe that or buy into that to this point. Right now, we just know they're 0-1 in the 2025 NFL season.
Let's keep it moving to worst win. So how I would categorize this is really a team that won on Sunday, started out the season 1-0, but was an ugly win. You know, maybe they played a bad team, whatever you want to classify it as, but it was an ugly win. They're not exactly ecstatic after that win. Who is your worst win of the weekend?
Yeah, this is a pretty obvious answer for me. I think it's the Cincinnati Bengals here, that they beat the Cleveland Browns 17-16. This was a Bengals team that I needed to see come out of the chute hot, that we know that the slow starts to the season have really plagued him. They've missed the playoffs in back-to-back years, that even while playing incredible football during the stretch of last season, they dug themselves a hole too deep for them to climb out of. I wanted to see focus right from week one. And that was not the team that we did see. It still looks like they have some issues on the defensive side of the ball, that Joe Flacco picked that team apart for some stretches of that game right there. If it were not for a missed extra point, we very well could be talking about a very different tune to this ultimately, and a missed field goal with a chance to get the win in there. So the Bengals got the job done. They are 1-0 in the standings, but I was very discouraged by how they actually looked on the field yesterday.
Here's why I'm not going with the Bengals. They won the game, and that's rare for them to do in week one. Like,
Sure.
they don't win games in week one. They just don't. Everyone thought it was going to be another colossal loss in week one because Browns really should have won that game. They missed an extra point. They missed a field goal. A lot of kicking woes that held them back. So that's why I'm not that disappointed in the Bengals, because they only gave up 14 points. Like, their defense didn't look good for stretches.
The Browns.
It didn't. Yeah, but it didn't. Wasn't like awful for most of the game. I thought the bigger problem to me was their offense. I mean, Joe Burrow only threw for 113 yards, and they had, like, what was it, less than 20 yards in the fourth quarter. They couldn't move the ball, and the reason why I'm not concerned about that is because it's Joe Burrow's offense with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I'm not worried about this offense.
2 receptions for Jamar Chase.
Yeah, we know this is a team under Joe Burrow that starts out season slow. In the past, though, they start out seasons slow and they lose all those games and are an 0-2 hole or 1-3 hole. And they have an uphill battle to make the playoffs. If you're winning these games, and Joe Burrow said after the game last year, he said, yeah, that was ugly, but in the past years, those are games that we've usually lost. So the fact that you can just get the 1-0 and get those wins on your resume early, but without having to rip off all these wins late in the season because you start out the season with all these losses, they'll be fine. They'll get better as the year goes on. Their offense is not a concern to me. And that's what was the worst part of the Bengals yesterday, was their offense. So I'm not really that worried about them. So I get it. They definitely didn't look good, but I'm not worried about them long term.
I think overall you're right, and I do mostly think that way, that as long as you find a way to win, that is at the end of the day what matters. I just really had talked myself into and wanted to see right from week one, like a different version of Cincinnati, like a foot on the gas right from week one of this season is different. We're not allowing ourselves to fall in that hole. Yes, they found a way to get a win, but that was not my vibe of what they looked like whatsoever. They didn't look prepared. This was a team that played in preseason more than I believe any other NFL team to make sure they could have a clean week one start. It just did not translate to the field there, and that was a concern to me. So I'm not panicked about their overall outlook, but pretty discouraged by what they looked like in week one.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's disappointing from the standpoint of they've talked about all offseason about getting off to a good start this season. You're right. That Joe Burrow and the first team offense played first quarter of the first preseason game against the Eagles, and then they played the first couple drives in the second preseason game. So they got preseason reps to avoid a slow start to the season. And of course, it didn't work for whatever reason. They just are a team that starts out slow every single season. But again, they got the win. So that's why I'm not that concerned. My worst win of the weekend was the Broncos, who escaped with a win against the Titans, but didn't look good at all. And I'm a big Bo Nix guy. I think Bo Nix is going to be an awesome quarterback, and the Broncos are going to be fine. But Bo Nix struggled with 2 picks. One was really bad. One was inexcusable, and one was just a really tough interception. He put the ball in kind of a questionable spot, but it was a really tough interception that the defender made. Another fumble. So 3 total turnovers for Bo Nix. It wasn't his best outing, but I'm not concerned about him moving forward. The defense is why I've been concerned about the Broncos this season and why I don't have the Broncos in the playoffs at all, because there's this defense that was considered one of the best in the league last year, benefited from a really awful schedule against some of the worst quarterbacks in the league. And that's what they got yesterday. They played a Cam Ward who was making his first ever NFL start, who did not look good for Tennessee. And he doesn't have a lot of help, bad offensive line, but not a lot of weapons around him. So they were playing another bad quarterback, and they benefited from that. I'm still not sold on this Broncos team at all. And it's a big reason is because of the defense. I just don't trust this defense against good competition, and their schedule is really much harder this year. So I'm not sold on this Broncos team, and really because of the defense, and there's nothing they did in week one to sell me.
Yeah, a couple things on this. For starters, the Bo Nix conversation, the biggest thing that I'd be complimentary of for Bo Nix from his rookie year is I thought he did a really nice job staying within his box, not trying to do too much or go outside that. That did not look like the Bo Nix that we saw yesterday, that I did think he was trying to force things a little bit, make that special play when sometimes you just got to take the average or what the defense gets you, and you will be punished by that against better football teams. I would push back a little bit on the Cam Ward conversation. that I walked away from yesterday impressed with Cam Ward. I think Tennessee needs to find a way to get him some weapons there. Even that final drive where the Tennessee trailing by 8, Cam Ward the ball in his hand, he threw 3 straight dimes of passes, particularly the second and third down play right there, that just right off the receiver's hands. You got to give him somebody, man. Calvin Ridley not cutting it. Like the options that they have at wide receiver just not quite good enough. I thought Cam Ward to me was impressive yesterday. I'm in agreement that like the Broncos did not play clean. I thought their defense still made a relatively solid impact there. They got a lot to clean up. I'm not panicking there. But Tennessee, I think I walked away from that specific matchup a bit more impressed with Tennessee than I was worried about Denver.
Yeah, I mean, everyone was accusing Knicks last year of being like a chuck down Charlie type.
Yeah.
And I think his game can extend beyond that. But what we saw yesterday was some of those longer throws ended up in interceptions, and it kind of felt like Sean Payton limited the playbook, went back to making just quick reads, quick easy throws for like 4 or 5 yards, screens, slants, all that stuff that Bo Nix really excels at. And I think Sean Payton did a good job of cleaning the playbook up and limiting it in that second half. But again, this Broncos schedule is just so tough. And maybe you're right about the Cam Ward stuff. I'll give you that. I don't think I probably exaggerating when I said he was really bad, but this Titans team is just a really bad team. And that's why the Broncos defense was able to get stops against them. This Broncos schedule is really tough. They got the Colts next week. Fine. We'll see what the Colts really are. That'll be an interesting matchup, honestly. Then they got the Chargers, Bengals, Eagles, Jets, Giants, Cowboys, Texans, Raiders, Chiefs, Commanders to close out September, October, and November. That is a really difficult schedule. That is not playing poor quarterbacks like they did last year, where they played a bunch of teams that were under 500, that weren't playoff teams, and some of the worst quarterbacks in the league. And that's why their defense, which is very similar personnel-wise from last year, was able to in terms of their scoring output and defensive scoring and defensive yards allowed, all those stats, they were at the top of the league because they played such bad quarterbacks. That's not the case over the next 2 months. So we're going to find out a lot about this Broncos team, this Broncos defense, but there was not a lot to be encouraged by in week 1.
And also, by the way, Sean Payton, dude, what are we doing on some of this play call, including when you have fourth? I think they were it would have been like a 40-ish yard field goal, or might have been even in the early 50s. They went for it on 4th down and threw the ball downfield with like a minute left in that game. They gave Cam Ward a chance to come back and win it. And if he has better wide receivers, I do think he does. So once again, there was all 3 of the passes that he tried in that attempted like comeback, drive there. I thought he did his part. The wide receivers left him hanging, but I thought it was incredibly stupid in the Broncos in the first place for just giving him a chance to that. You could have buried that game. And even if the thought process is, if we miss this field goal, we give him great field position, then why are you throwing it 30 yards down the field on that 4th and 1? So that decision didn't make any sense to me. I was confused and didn't get it at the time. Don't get it now. Not even really sure what the logic is with that. Go ahead.
I didn't hate it because, look, I mean, you throw the ball down the field and ends up in an interception. It's like that's essentially a punt, right? Like if that's one reasoning. Another reasoning is you're giving the ball back to Cam Ward. It's not like you're giving the ball back to Patrick Mahomes here. I think Sean Payton's logic and reasoning is, all right, Cam Ward, go get a game-winning drive in your first ever NFL start. Dude, try that. And of course, obviously, it ended up working out. So I think it's different logic and reasoning if you're playing a really talented quarterback.
Sure. I just think that you increase your risk in a way that was completely unnecessary there. Like even if you want to go for it, which I can kind of understand that thought process, like give yourself a legitimate chance of picking up the first down. I don't think they did that. Like run it up the gut or throw a little slant or whatever the case may be. I thought it was a waste of a play. And I think in general that I'm siding with, you kick the ball right there.
Yeah, no, that's fair. All right, let's keep it moving here. So we gave you our best win, our worst win of the weekend. Let's go to the worst loss of the weekend, a team that you thought just completely fell flat on their face and just was an ugly loss, a lot to clean up after week 1. Sean, what is your worst loss of week 1?
My worst loss goes to my Carolina Panthers right here. Bryce
You
Young.
must have expected something from them then.
Yeah, I did. You won't find a guy on the planet with more Bryce Young stock than myself right here. And a dip in that stock price after week 1, I got to say. It's disappointing. This has to be the year I need something. That you got Tet, who I thought looked very good at wide receiver, the rookie making his debut there. That there's, I believe, something that this Panthers team, to me, has to be competent this year. They did not look the part in week 1 whatsoever. Ultimately, that they did fall. It's 26-10 to a Jaguars team that I think just is not really that good. I don't think Trevor Lawrence played particularly well. 19 of 31 for 178, a touchdown and a pick there. But Bryce Young, even worse. 18 of 35 for 154 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions there. A 49 quarterback rating, a 20.1 QBR there. It's got to be better. I'm disappointed in Bryce Young, and I have no choice but to hold the stock at this point. It's feeling pretty uncomfortable here in Bryce Young territory.
Yeah, when he was great last year down the stretch and people started getting encouraged after he came back from that benching, his number one target was Adam Thielen.
Yeah.
That was his guy. And when they traded him earlier this offseason or
Which
a
I
few
still
weeks
don't
ago,
get, by the way. I still don't understand why they did that. It felt like they were doing the guy a favor to like send him back to Minnesota. But you know what? You're in the business of being a good football team. Like, what is the appeal to Carolina to do that? It didn't make sense to me at the time. It looked even worse after week 1.
Yeah, I don't get it. Like, that was Bryce Young's top target. And now this is a huge year for Bryce Young. I mean, you're deciding whether this guy is your future or not this season. And you're getting rid of his number one target when he started playing well at the end of last season. I didn't get it. It looked like the Bryce Young at the beginning of the season before his benching last year. He was not good. On the flip side, Trevor Lawrence didn't even look that good either. It was the Jaguars defense that came up. And I like this Jaguars team. I think this Jaguars team can compete for a playoff spot. I like Liam Cohen. But Trevor Lawrence did not look as great as you would expect, because this is another guy this is a huge year for, where we're going to figure out a lot about him. Trevor Lawrence and that Jaguars offense was not great. I'm not concerned necessarily, but I wasn't overly impressed with the Jaguars as much as I was disappointed with the Panthers.
I threw out this take in the Gambler group chat yesterday and didn't get a lot of reaction to it here. What do you think about Trevor Lawrence is the Kyle Pitts of quarterbacks here? Feels like every year this is going to be the season that he's going to break out, that the talent is there. You can see it. It has yet to happen for Trevor Lawrence. That yes, there have been flashes there. I think that's a pretty fair comp.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, he did show 3 years ago when the Jaguars made the playoffs and they won that playoff game. He was really good that year.
Who did they beat again? I forget.
The Chargers. They beat the Chargers when I believe they were down like 28-0, was
27,
it?
27-0
they were down, and the Jaguars came back and beat the Chargers.
Interesting.
Trevor Lawrence had a great season that year. He did. Like that's when everyone was like, all right, this is the number one pick that everyone expected and people were hyping up as this generational prospect. So so we've seen a full season of it. It hasn't been just like 3 or 4 game samples. So I still believe in Trevor Lawrence, but you're right, where it's every year people are expecting more and more. He's also dealt with a ton of coaching turnover, play callers turnover. Like he's had to learn a new playbook.
Some quarterbacks win Super Bowls when that's the case.
It's true, but also some quarterbacks like that have the best offensive line, Saquon Barkley, the best wide receiving core, on and on and on. But and the best GM in the league, whatever. But so yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of turnover. Not to make excuses for Trevor Lawrence, like this is a huge year for him.
Yeah.
But let me give you my worst loss. It's the Detroit Lions, who are hitting the plague that the Eagles hit a couple years ago. I mean, it took a little while for the Eagles to actually feel the effects of this plague. It's way harder than people realize to replace 2 coordinators plague.
Yeah.
Like it really is. And a lot of people don't realize it because they think it's just, and everyone's talked about Ben Johnson and his move to Detroit and how that would affect Jared Goff, but it was both sides of the ball. Aaron Glenn also moved on, and that Packers team destroyed the Lions. That was a division rivalry game. And the Packers, that was like, in terms of their physical makeup, that Packers offensive line dominated the Lions defensive line. The Packers defensive line dominated the defensive line, the Lions offensive line, got to Jared Goff every twist and turn. Jared Goff really struggled, pressured him to oblivion. It wasn't even Micah Parsons that much. Micah Parsons played limited snaps. He had his moments for sure, but it's in this entire Packers defense. And I love Jordan Love. I think he's an MVP candidate. He's the big reason why I think the Packers are going to be in the Super Bowl and win the NFC this year. But I was more impressed by the Packers defense. And I think this is a serious concern for the Lions, where Jared Goff doesn't have his play caller anymore. Aaron Glenn's out. It's going to take some time for everyone to get used to these new coordinators being in the building. And when we see this, it usually ends up in not great results the next season. Doesn't mean the Lions are going to be bad or miss the playoffs or anything. But when we see 2 coordinators replaced, there's usually not the same level of success and continuity within each group, the offense and the defense. And that's what we're seeing from the Lions. And are you like concerned about Jared Goff at all without Ben Johnson? Because he did not look good.
I am a little bit concerned, I think. But I do think there's a non-zero chance where like the Lions completely tank this year under the outside looking in from a playoff perspective. That I do think it could potentially get that bad if things work out. That was a convincing victory by the Green Bay Packers. That was we are outside of the Eagles, I think the Packers are very clearly the biggest threat in the NFC. And like, I think we all sort of had talked ourselves into that a little bit as the offseason went on. I think that is pretty clear. Like when you look around the rest of the conference, they're the only team that looked that competitive, that confident, and that legitimate as far as a threat right there. I do think I probably walked away from yesterday saying that said a little bit more about the Packers than it did about the Lions. But I do think Dan Campbell is the type of coach that is at his best when he is more of the CEO type, that he is deferring, allowing others to take care of their respective units on offense and defense, in the same way that Nick Sirianni is here in Philadelphia. So I do think Detroit is headed for a pretty significant step back this year. I'm not confident that they fully get the train back on the tracks here. I don't think that they're going to be a disaster, that they'll win a handful of games, but yeah, not a good start to the season. And I do think that it is going to get worse from here.
Yeah, I'm with you on all that. You're probably right where it's such a tough division. Like even if the Vikings are in the mix in that division, the Bears too, like
Right.
the Lions could slip out of the playoffs in the NFC North. So we'll see, but it's going to take some time for the continuity to hit in between Jared Goff and the new OC and all those coordinator change. So we'll see what's going on in Detroit. Let's keep it moving here. Let's go to the best loss of the weekend. We probably have the same team here as everyone does, and it was probably the game of the 1:00 slate. There was a couple good ones. Bucks, Falcons was in there too, but this was probably the game of the 1:00 slate, and I'm glad we're about to talk about it. Assuming you're going to say this team. If not, we could go in a different direction. But what was the best loss of the weekend in your mind?
Yeah, I had two that I was really torn with. I believe what you're referring to is the Jets right
Sure
here is
is.
where your mind is. Yeah, I thought Justin Fields was incredible, man. One of my stocks went up this week. I got plenty of Justin Fields stock as well. So shout out to him for proving me right. Beyond just like with his legs, which I think we all expected, he was slinging the football, man, fitting it in some tight windows. And I do think that team played with a direct identity. The Aaron Glenn, for all that we just talked about what was missing from the Detroit Lions, guess what? We found it up in New York, because that's what it felt like to me. That felt like some old Detroit Lions football. So we're going to be physical. We're going to be compete. It's a real bummer that the Steelers did come out and win that one. I think that was as Steelers of a victory as you're sort of going to get there. Thought Rodgers looked good on the other side of the ball, which I did not expect. I think finishing the game with just that Jalen Ramsey just delivering the hit to break up an incompletion there. That's like the way that you want to win it from a Steelers perspective. I thought it was an awesome game all around. I'm very encouraged by what I saw from both teams right there. I'm not worried about the Jets whatsoever. And I think if anything, feel better about them after week one, even though it did end up with a loss.
Yeah, I'm not sold on the Jets. I'm just gonna be honest, and I do want to flip this and talk about the Steelers more, because I was really impressed with the Steelers. But I'm not sold on the Jets. And when we do overreact to week one and week two in the first month of the season, let's just remember that the Saints started out 2-0 last year.
Yeah, but we knew. Like, I don't think
Did we know they were started out 2-0? They were averaging like 30 plus points a game. Derek Carr was the guy. Did we know?
I felt like I knew last year. And I think the Steelers team, we watched the Steelers team go like 6-0. This was probably 4 or 5 years ago, that I remember every week being like, this is the worst on the
Then they started 10-0 actually.
Was it 10-0? The
Yeah.
Steelers? Yeah.
Yeah.
What I remember about that season specifically is every week they won, I went, this is the worst 4-0 team I've ever seen. This is worst 5-0 team. This is worst 6-0 team. You're right. But I think like there is a general pulse where you can feel it, whether it's real or not.
Yes, but like after 1 or 2 weeks, it's harder. I'm just like the Jets running game is really good, and that's the recipe for Justin Field. It's kind of that similar Eagles just Jalen Hurts model, where it's like you're going to rely on a good offensive line. The Jets offensive line looked good yesterday, and a very great running game with two backs, really, what they were implementing. And Justin Fields is also capable of adding to that running game with his legs, kind of what you see with Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. So this Jets running game is really good. I'm just not sold on Justin Fields because he zipped the ball really well yesterday. You're right. But that seems a little fluky to me. And I was underimpressed with the Steelers defense. Justin Fields is not a guy we've seen. And there's a lot of sample size out there about him. He's not a guy we've seen be able to consistently throw the football like that. He threw it really well yesterday. He zipped the ball. He was completing a ton of his passes with good accuracy, honestly. But he's not a guy that you've seen that for most of his career. So I'm not completely sold on this Jets team after starting 0-1 and scoring 32 points. I'm not like, oh my God, this Jets team is going to compete in the division now. They'll be fine. They probably won't be as bad as I thought they would be, but their defense struggled. Like their defense really struggled, and that was supposed to be the strength of this team. Are they going to clean that up? Is Justin Fields going to continue this trajectory and turn his career around on his third team it is now? Maybe. Yep. I don't see that happening for Justin Fields. And I know you and Mark are big Justin Fields guys, and you guys have owned stock for a long time. I'm still holding, but before investors start investing in the Justin Fields stock, because it's at all-time high right now. I just see it dip a little bit more before you even think about it, because I'm just not sold on Justin Fields being this turnaround story for the Jets.
I push back on the notion of we have had legitimate sample size. Like, he played 3 years for the Bears and was directly set up to fail because they got the number 1 pick and they wanted Caleb Williams. I would even go as far as to say, if we're going to make the bet right now for Caleb Williams versus Justin Fields for the rest of their career, I'm taking Justin Fields in that debate.
Huh?
And
right now, the rest of their career?
Correct. I would Justin Fields over Caleb Williams.
With Ben Johnson well, we're about to find out tonight. With Ben Johnson as play caller?
What have you seen from Caleb Williams that remotely convinces you more than
you just blame Justin Fields' Bears tenure on a disastrous situation?
Correct.
Caleb Williams was dealing with a disastrous situation last year with Matt Eberflus and that entire staff and that organization in Chicago. He is a completely different team, play caller, culture, everything now. So yeah, we'll find out this season, but I'm not using last year as some indication that Caleb Williams is some bust.
I think it's unfair to fully hold last year against Caleb Williams, but I certainly wasn't encouraged by what I saw from him. The thing that I do respect is the dude got up and continued to compete from start to finish when getting the crap kicked out of him. And I do respect that about Caleb Williams. But my point here is more so about Justin Fields has never had the opportunity to flourish. Like Pittsburgh last year, started 6 games. The Steelers were 4-2 when he was benched for Russell Wilson last year. He averaged 185 passing yards per game, looked pretty solid. Threw for 315 yards in a matchup last year. He threw for 212 and had 3 total touchdowns yesterday. And again, he was fitting it in windows, man. This was not fluff, screen pass, rollout type quarterback. This was real deal. They put stuff on his plate and he ate it up and delivered, man. I like Justin Fields. I do think that there's something there. And I think this is the first time in his entire career where it's an actual organization investing back in him.
I will give you that he fit the ball in a lot of tight windows yesterday, and that was impressive. He was always going to get benched for Russell Wilson last year, but it's not like the Steelers were winning because of him. Like, if he was playing out of his mind, the Steelers would have had to keep going with him. They weren't winning because of Justin Fields.
He made it hard though, man. Like, he did not
He wasn't bad. He wasn't bad by any means, but they were winning because of that defense. We all know that. The quarterback play wasn't a problem all season.
They didn't win games because of Russ either.
Yeah, I'm not saying they did. But Russell Wilson was always just going to start in that situation. They weren't winning games all year because of their quarterback. It was the defense which led them to the playoffs last year. And we'll talk about the Steelers in a second, but for me, it's just with Justin Fields, that sample size is there where he can be a good quarterback, but he has to be a really low volume passer, which the Jets do have the formula for that with a great running game and a good offensive line, it looked like yesterday. So they have the formula for that. He has to be a low volume passer, though. I just don't think that Justin Fields is going to be the guy that he's the answer at quarterback now. He's going to turn your fortune around as a franchise. I mean, every quarterback that's gone to the Jets over the last, over a decade at this point has been set up for failure. Maybe it's a different culture that Aaron Glenn's building. I'm not buying it after 1 week, though. A game they lost, by the way. They're still 0-1. I'm not buying it.
You think the Jets have a worse track record than the Chicago Bears if we're going to have that overall conversation?
It's pretty close.
Yeah, that's my point. It's like
they're equally as awful organizations in terms of quarterback development.
I'm trying to think of a way to set up this wager, but yeah, I'm in on Justin Fields over Caleb Williams for the rest of their careers.
Yeah, I think that's crazy. I mean, look, forget the talent for a second. Look at the situation Caleb Williams is now dealing with compared to Justin Fields and the play caller that Ben Johnson has, who's considered one of the best offensive minds in the league.
How many tenths of a second do you think he'll get before he has to throw the ball this year?
I mean, they shored up the offensive line in the offseason. We'll see if they reap those rewards tonight, but based on their signings and their drafts, they definitely prioritized the offensive line. There's no doubt about that.
For what it's worth, when it was the time when the Bears had the number 1 pick, where they were going to draft Caleb Williams, what I would have done if I was general manager, and you can check with Mark Henry Jr. because I was hammering the table for this on the show, I would have drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. and I would have paired him with Justin Fields, and I think the Bears would be in a better spot as an organization.
Marvin Harrison Jr. had a great game yesterday, but he didn't have some rookie season where he was this otherworldly wide receiver that you should write home about.
Well, Kyler Murray, we can look.
I don't think Caleb Williams is going to be some superstar. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback, and the Bears are going to be a good team this year.
We'll see. I think that we have far more evidence to suggest why we should be selling Caleb Williams stock than buying right now.
But all we do is talk about situation. We just talk about with Daniel Jones, awful situation in New York, bad organization. He goes to a new team, but it's also a new play caller and a new system and everything. That's what Caleb Williams is getting this season. He's getting a new system, a new play caller, and they did things to help surround him with weapons, with a better offensive line, all that to make it an easier situation for Caleb Williams. He dealt with disastrous situation last year. He just did, and it was on the Bears organization where they had a lame duck coach the whole entire season, and that's a disservice to Caleb Williams. They don't have that this year. Like, as far as I'm concerned, this is Caleb Williams' rookie season. I think that's how everyone should be viewing it. This is his rookie season, and he wasn't like you're acting like he was god awful last year. Like, he wasn't good, but I would say he was like mediocre. He definitely didn't live up to expectations, but he was like fine given the circumstance.
Did you read any of that Caleb Williams?
Yeah, I did. I mean, to me, that was all those sources are obviously from guys who were fired, who aren't with the Bears organization anymore. Like, what are those guys going to say? Like,
I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I do think that is for sure a piece that was written with a clear intention or a direction sent with of what the message and what they're trying to get off there. I also don't think it's nothing. Like, I don't know. I'm not 100% locked in that Caleb Williams does the other side of stuff. The quarterback things, not just directly playing football, the other side of quarterback duties. I'm not sold that Caleb Williams has that.
Yeah, you could be right. I mean, you could be right. I think the biggest indicators if a quarterback is going to be successful is the simple question: do you love football? And a lot of guys say they do, but they don't actually.
Who was at his birthday party? I want to know.
Caleb Williams?
Yeah.
Was that part of the article?
No, that was the throwback, the draft day. The movie. Yeah. But I want to know who was at his birthday party.
I don't know.
But Callahan.
Who they do that with? Russell? Oh, it was Russell Wilson recently. Like, he had a birthday party and nobody showed up. But we know what Russell Wilson is. That's conversation for later. Let's keep it. Oh no! Before we get off this, I want to talk about the other team that the Jets played, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I've been impressed with. You know, I picked them to win the division. Obviously, that was a long shot pick, but I do think the Steelers team is really good and capable of winning a playoff game. And part of it is because I can't quit Aaron Rodgers. I just can't quit Aaron Rodgers. He's been my favorite. He's not the best quarterback I've ever seen, but he's been my favorite quarterback to watch growing up my entire life. The way he throws the football, he is. And I think it was Tom Brady that said it recently. He said Aaron Rodgers is a better passer than me. Doesn't mean he's a better quarterback, because that encompasses a lot. But Aaron Rodgers, he said, was a better passer than him. He's been my favorite guy to watch throw the football. And we saw some encouraging stuff late in last season with the Jets in terms of his mobility. I was impressed with how he moved yesterday. Like, his rollouts, and obviously the Steelers design this type of stuff for him, but his rollouts and how he was able to deliver the ball with zip like he always did his entire career, his arm talent is unquestionably still there. He was the first Steelers quarterback to throw 4 touchdown passes since 2020. That was Big Ben. So it's been a long time since the Steelers have had competent quarterback play. They only scored 34 points, the Steelers, that is, twice last season. They just did it in game 1 this year with Aaron Rodgers. So the defense wasn't great against Justin Fields, and there's questions about that because that's supposed to be their strength. But again, it was week 1. I think the Steelers team is going to be really good, and I think Rodgers is back as there's still some, I don't know, like mobility concerns, I guess you could call them, but I think Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers team is back.
Yeah, you know the old saying that quarterbacks don't typically hit their prime till their mid-50s here, so we're still getting there for Aaron Rodgers. I'm
not saying, but even way worse than his. I mean, he won an MVP 4 seasons ago.
Yeah, he's been atrocious since.
Okay, he wasn't great the next year. His last year in Green Bay wasn't great.
You know what he ranked? So he played all 17 games that year. You know what he ranked among quarterbacks in QBR the year after the MVP season?
No, what did he rank?
27th.
Yeah, he wasn't great. Like I said, he wasn't great. But again, like that was a year, a lot. Like, he probably knew his last year in Steelers, whatever. I'm not going to make excuses for him. He wasn't great. Then you have the Achilles thing. So the next 2 years, as far as I'm concerned, are a wash. He's now going to a team where it has a great culture, a great defense already. This team has made the playoffs every single season. He just needs to elevate the quarterback play, which has been so bad. And we saw with the weapons that he has with DK Metcalf. I mean, they had no running game yesterday. They obviously have to establish a running game so Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to throw the ball a million times a game. But they have the weapons, and Aaron Rodgers, he can still throw a beautiful ball. Like that's unquestionable. When he's 60, he'll be able to do that.
I'm not a Rodgers guy. I do think he gets a worse rep than he sometimes deserves. That like even his experience with the Jets, I do think he genuinely tried to fit into that organization to be like a New York quarterback, and the Achilles thing popped up, and then it was a disaster situation. Like I don't think that was as like him trying to be a cancer to the team or a distraction or anything like that. I do think he bought in a way that he doesn't really get the credit for, but nonetheless, it went how it went. I
So
we'll see.
there's nothing from yesterday that gave you hope about not just Rodgers but this entire Steelers team moving forward.
He impressed me. The run game was like non-existent. Get
Not
Caleb Johnson the rock because I say as a fantasy owner and a guy who I do believe in him as a talent there. When you have Mike Tomlin, you pencil him out in for 9 wins a year. That's just how it goes. It can be Mason Rudolph throwing the quarterback. It could be Aaron Rodgers. It can be Ben Roethlisberger. They're going to be above 500 team and a playoff team. Like we know that to be the case right there. I don't see anything that like increases my optimism of this team can like win in the playoffs just yet, but it is just week 1.
I mean, Rodgers looked. You're not giving any credit to how Rodgers looked.
He looked way better than I thought. I will admit that. He moved better than I thought. The arm was still there. The movement, I would say, is probably the most notable thing to me.
Yeah, and then that was designed. Like he's always been best, like rolling out outside the pocket and making those like kind of off balance throws in a way. 244 yards, 4 touchdowns, 136 passer rating. Like he played really well, and I was impressed with his movement coming back from now 2 years removed from an Achilles injury. And he has like DK Metcalf had an incredible catch and run. He has the weapons where I think this Pittsburgh Steelers team is going to be really good. And I will always enjoy watching Aaron Rodgers throw the football. Always. I don't care about the off field stuff, whatever. That's all his personality, all that's different. Him throwing the football has always been one of my favorite things to watch. I'm gonna cherish the moments we have while they're still here.
Yeah, I get that. One last shout because I almost went for this for the best loss. The Atlanta Falcons, man. Michael Penix, like that was I'm a franchise quarterback type of performance to start that. Down with taking them down, driving to tie up the game on a touchdown in a play that I still have no clue how he stayed on his feet. And that's after I still kind of think he threw a tying touchdown to Drake London that was ultimately called incomplete on the field and upheld after review there. He drove him down again with 59 seconds on the clock, got the ball back, set Younghoe Koo up for a 44-yard field goal, and he ultimately missed it to cost him the game there. Really frustrating from a result standpoint there, but I could not be more impressed with what I saw from Michael Penix and really encouraged by the Falcons overall.
Yeah, that's definitely a candidate for best loss. I have the Falcons win that division. I'm not discouraged by that necessarily. It's going to be a battle between them and the Bucs, but I thought the Falcons were the better team for most of that game.
Yeah.
And I mean, Younghoe Koo really screwed me because they were the last leg, but we won't get into that. I was very upset, and the Falcons had opportunities, like even before that, to kind of seal the game, which of course they didn't. But still, this Falcons team was impressive because Michael Penix Jr. was great yesterday, and I think he's a really good quarterback. He showed that in his 3 or 4 starts last year, and that was evident yesterday. So I think the Falcons are going to be a threat, and I'm with you on that. We touched on almost every game. Is there any overreact? The one we didn't was Giants. Commanders keeping in the NFC East. But is there anything from that game you want to touch on? Any overreactions you're buying, not buying, or anything else you want to hit on?
I got a couple more takes that I have jotted down for the notes. Things I liked from this weekend. Number 1, kickoffs are back, man. Kickoffs, they're everywhere. They're running it back constantly.
People were really critical of them last year. They were fun yesterday.
Yeah, no, it was like every kickoff, they're pretty much taking it back. So I thought that was a thing I wanted to shout out. Things I also liked. The NFC sucks. It just does across the board. Like after Thursday night, I felt like so many significant takes where the Eagles are not good enough right now. They got to get better. I hope you watch the rest of the NFC play on Sunday because really outside of the Packers, not a single team impressed me.
The Rams defense was awesome.
Okay.
The Rams defense was awesome, and I'm not worried that much about the offense, Matt Stafford, all that. The Rams, it wasn't a pretty win, but they won ugly, which you have to do sometimes, especially in week 1. The Rams defense was really good. We know what that pass rush is with Jared Verse. The Rams defense really impressed me. That's the only team in the NFC I'll say.
Yeah. I'll give you that. I'll also note I don't want to say a skeptic of Puka Nacua, but I think that he got thrown into an elite category a little quickly there. He's unbelievable, man. He is real. They're one of the top wide receivers in the NFL. So I'm willing to now have that conversation, have him in that category when I was a little bit, not willing to until this point. So shout out to Puka Nacua. Another one, I think this one will rattle a couple more feathers. Tyrese Maxey coming out and proclaiming himself to be a Cowboys fan. I support it. I think he took a lot of heat right here. This is what I'll say. I think it is way less fraudulent to be a kid that grew up in Dallas, that grew up a Cowboys fan. I think it's way more like real deal for him to stick with that team than it would be to flip to their biggest rival just because he plays in Philadelphia. You grew up a Cowboys fan. This is not something you're trying to be different. And by the way, they suck right now, so you're not even doing this as like a front-running standpoint. I support Tyrese Maxey supporting the Cowboys, even though they obviously suck.
Yeah, are people really upset by that? Like,
I mean, it's the internet, so you're always going to get people upset. But I did see quite a few people going at him about that.
If anything, that shows his loyalty. Which,
that's how I feel.
Be good. Yeah, it's I want to bring something up now that you mentioned Tyrese Maxey, but that's a good thing that Tyrese Maxey is being loyal to his team. He's not just going to flip just because he's been in Philly for a few years. It's not how it works. Even Jalen Brunson's still a diehard Eagles fan, and he's the king of New York. So that's ridiculous if you're mad at that. I didn't know who Ice Show Speed was. I had no idea until last week. He took over the internet, I guess, because he was in Philly at the Eagles facility, whatever. But he also was with Paul George, and people were really upset at Paul George when Ice Show Speed asked Paul George, "Are you from Philly?" And Paul George said, "Hell nah." He was like, "Hell no, I'm not from Philly." And then he asked them, he said, like, "I just play here" or something. I think people were way too upset about that. And I get it. Like, well, what are you going to do? Like, people hate Paul George because of the games played and the production. And that's why. So anything Paul George now, they'll pile on. But, like, he said, "I play here." That's a fact. He just does play here. Like, he's not from Philly. He's an LA guy. He's a West Coast guy. I don't think it was a shot at, like, the city necessarily.
The hell no did feel
it was a strong hell no. It was really like, hell no.
Yes. He could have said it more gentle or softer. Yeah. I will say that. It's not anything I'm up in arms. And I don't even think Paul George has got like the full Philly experience yet, that he's still like settling in to an extent. He had a disaster of a year that he played 41 games. There was no playoffs. Like, that's when he'll start to feel of like what Philly is about right there. So yeah, it's not anything that I was up in arms about, but I did see that clip. It was kind of funny to me. I won't lie.
Anything else from your likes or don't like?
I said the Mike Daniel thing. That's pretty much it for my likes and dislikes. Should we hit on the Kawhi stuff real briefly? I got to pop off here relatively soon, but
Kawhi Leonard, I was going to wrap up with the Kawhi stuff. So, I mean, of course, it's NFL Week 1, college football Week 2, and the NBA news cycle just never stops. It never, ever stops. It's the driest time of the year before training camp opens pretty soon, about 3 weeks for most teams, September 24th, 25th, around then. But there was some more notable news when Pablo Torre did a great investigation and
found Pablo, who absolutely rules.
Yeah, he's been incredible with finding these stories that we don't even know we care about, but we care about. And he's one of the best reporters in the game. One of the only real people still doing like genuine journalism at this point. But he, in his investigation and report, found that the Clippers allegedly tried to circumvent the cap by signing, when they signed Kawhi Leonard back in, not the first time, it was the second time, to an extension in 2021 when he took less money. Allegedly, or this isn't alleged, he was signed by this organization called Aspirations, which was a tree planting company, supposed to be this environmental company, which ended up being a fraudulent Ponzi scheme, and the co-founders are now pled guilty for fraud, essentially.
And that is fact. That is factual. That portion of things.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And what Clippers and Kawhi Leonard are alleged to do is that they signed, and Steve Ballmer, the Clippers owner, was the main investor, invested $50 million into this company. And the Clippers signed Paul George as one of like their marketing guys, as someone who would endorse and promote the campaign. And he was essentially paid $28 million to not do anything for the organization and no show. And so there's a lot of speculation now, and this is what Pablo Torre is alleging, and this is what the NBA's open investigation, that the Clippers just used that organization, which Steve Ballmer was the main investor for, as a way to pay Kawhi Leonard more money to circumvent the cap and eventually give Kawhi Leonard a smaller deal. So now investigation is open. It's a fascinating story. There's so many different storylines that we could dive into. The potential suspension or punishment, I should say. I don't know about suspension, but potential punishments that are in store, and a lot of other things about cap circumvention. Because let me just say the first things first is that it's not unusual. In fact, it's normal for teams to sign players and then their main sponsors, also those players sign sponsorship deals with them. That's normal.
Not for $28 million though.
That's a lot of money for sure. $7 million a year, but
To do
that's a lot of
nothing.
money. But it's not unusual. Teams do that all the time. Like teams like Cooper Flag has a main sponsorship deal with one of the Mavs main sponsors. That's a normal thing. It's the fact that this organization was a fraudulent company. And the question really is, did Steve Ballmer know that Kawhi Leonard was getting paid this much? Was he involved with the payment because he was a main investor of this company? And that would be cap circumvention. That would be a drastic penalty. And the only instance of this was Joe Smith around 25 years ago, where there was a paper trail that was very evident that Joe Smith and his organization was circumventing the cap to sign him, and that organization lost 5 first-round picks. So let me just, with all those details, and we're missing some because there's a lot to dive into, let me just throw it to you with what are your reactions and what are you taking away from this story?
Yeah, and the reason that this became public is because the company did go bankrupt, and that there's a direct paper trail of those documents become public when that happens, and you can see the $28 million going to the KL2 organization with Kawhi Leonard on the name there. So there is the direct. We know that the money was sent to Kawhi Leonard. We know.
Yes, but there's not any paper trail of Steve Ballmer's involvement.
True to an extent. I guess I'll say this. I find it logically impossible that Steve Ballmer had no clue of any of this. That Kawhi Leonard being paid more than any other, more than Leonardo DiCaprio, more than these like A-list celebrities in the mix there. There's something to this. Now, granted, like we're going to have to bookend a lot of these takeaways until the investigation takes place. My gut feeling is that the Clippers are very guilty in this and that there needs to be like a significant punishment. With that said, I don't really know how you do that or execute that or what is a fair way to do this. And by the way, Steve Ballmer, the 6th richest human being in the world, man. Like he has the money, the funds, and the resources to make this go away and basically beat the NBA if that is the path that this goes down.
Yeah, so I'm with you that it's more likely than not that Steve Ballmer knew, just based logically on everything we know. Like even going back to, this is pretty noteworthy, going back to 2015, where Steve Ballmer, he was very new owner, and in that offseason, the Clippers and the Mavs were in this free agency race for DeAndre Jordan. And the Clippers signed DeAndre Jordan, and it came out that they actually like put a sponsorship deal for a car dealership that the Clippers had on the table as part of that deal, which you're not allowed to do when you're signing a player. It's only in terms of the cap for your actual basketball, your basketball job. You're not allowed to do that. And the Clippers were fined for that. I forget, it wasn't a hefty fine or anything, but Steve Ballmer and the Clippers were fined. So he's guilty of this in the past. But why I would want to give him the benefit of the doubt is because he would have to be so dumb. Like, this is one of the richest guys in the world who we know is brilliant. And he did a sit-down interview Friday night, which was bizarre to do it Friday night, with Ramona Shelburne, which is a disastrous interview. I mean, he's just not like a good talker, communicator in that regard. But Steve Ballmer is a really brilliant guy. That's how he's one of the richest guys who's on this earth right now. He would have to be so stupid to get fined almost a decade ago for a very similar instance. Know that obviously the NBA talked to him about it. Know that you are absolutely not allowed to do this. And I believe that he could have been defrauded by this company, and he thought it was a legitimate company, and they just lied to him. And that's happens all the time. Investors will invest in a Ponzi scheme, and it comes out that they're just stealing their money. So that's smart, rich people happen to that. So that's not like inexcusable for me. But he would have to be so stupid to do this without thinking that he could get caught and having real involvement, which is like why I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, even though you're right that like all of the signs point to this being probably the case.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about like, I guess I'll go this. I'll say like I think it'd be more negligent than stupid. Like I think it could be something that slipped through the cracks of like I didn't quite cover my tail here. And the other circumstantial
that would be stupid if he didn't cover his tail.
It would be. He's got a lot on his plate, Steve Ballmer, man. Like I think that this could be something more forgotten than like just stupid. I'll throw the other circumstantial parts of this. We do know that there were reports when Kawhi Leonard was a free agent about him requesting these crazy things like a private jet from the Lakers. And there's a report about the Raptors that he requested $15 million off the books up there. We know that. We know that he signed with the Clippers. I don't want to go any farther than that. Like, I think we got to let the investigation play itself out, but it just feels like the entire like logic part of my brain is like, something's happening here. Something is not quite right. And they're going to have to find the smoking gun for the punishment to come out. But how can they even? Like, are you going to find the sixth richest man in the world? Are you going to take away draft picks of a team that already barely has any, that the Sixers directly have their 2029 and a swap in 2028 for this Clippers team here? Like, are you just going to take their draft picks in the 2030s? I have no clue how you correct this. But if you can find that smoking gun, I do think you have to like lay the hammer on this Clippers organization.
Yeah, so we know Uncle Dennis obviously is the guy who represents him off the court, and we know that Uncle Dennis is a guy who has requested for things that he's not allowed to request for in the past for a lot of from a lot of organizations where you're just not allowed to get these extra, I don't call them perks, but extra side deals when you're negotiating a contract to play basketball. You're not allowed to do that. So there is all of like the smoke is there, the tea leaves are there that it could be true and logically would make sense based on the evidence. But the evidence is very circumstantial. And I don't necessarily know you can drop the hammer down without a legitimate paper trail and proof that Steve Ballmer was aware of this and doing this to circumvent the cap. And I don't think there is a paper trail. I don't think that exists because that would be of Steve Ballmer's involvement. Because number one, that would just be insane, like next level stupid. I don't know if he's capable of that type of stupidity. And second, I think it would have been found already. It would have been released already. So I don't necessarily see how you can drop the hammer on this guy. So it's a really unique situation because they should probably be fined to an extent when an investigation finds. Maybe the investigation language says it's more likely than not that Steve Ballmer knew about this and was involved in this deal. But more likely than not should not be the burden of proof when you're dropping the hammer on someone. So maybe it's a hefty fine, but a hefty fine to Steve Ballmer would be nothing. So I'm not convinced. It's interesting, but I'm not convinced that this is going to be some groundbreaking story and investigation when the investigation is actually complete.
Yeah, but the last thing I'll know before I got to pop off here is like, we also know when that first investigation was found, the Clippers did something wrong about the cap kind of situation. Is the NBA put in there that we reserve the right to reopen these type of investigations at any point? Like it felt like the feeling of that was like we're onto something, but we don't exactly have it. This is more in that category. My spidey senses are tingling that like the Clippers are very directly doing something wrong. They just have to like nail that down and find it.
Yeah, I mean you could be right. I mean I'm not speaking with a lot of conviction right now because I'm torn, honestly. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if Steve Ballmer knew or not. There's definitely the tea leaves there, and I'm not convinced that there's going to be some groundbreaking punishment. So I'm very unknown and not speaking with a lot of conviction, but it's a very interesting storyline and situation. But all right, that'll do it for us on Fox Sports The Gambler. Sean Barnard and Sam Oshtry breaking down everything that went on in Sunday's action of the NFL and some NBA news too, which you never know will drop on us in early September. We'll be back next Monday. Stay tuned. We'll talk to you later.